In this video, we're going to show you several different techniques that will help you remove unwanted materials from your project picture. These techniques we call cloning techniques. Now, whenever we do cloning, in some cases we just aren't going to be able to do any cloning to remove the unwanted materials. An example of that would be, let's say I have a tree here, and the tree is covering up a large portion of the house. I don't have a whole lot to work with to reinvent the window that we have here, or cover up the brick here that we have on the front of the house. So in some cases, cloning will not work for you. But let's go ahead and show you several different techniques that will help you remove materials such as what you see here. The first tools that we're going to talk about are clone brushes. Now, if we go up to the toolbar, you're going to see a drop-down box with a slider on it. That's our brush size. We want to go ahead and bump the brush size up to around a 50 or so. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is go up to our Draw menu and select Clone Brush and Floating, and then Square Brush. Okay. I'm going to define the source area. Now, the source area is the area that I'm going to paint with over the top of the existing vegetation. So I'm going to select this brick up here as my source area, and then I'll move down to the destination and click there. Now, when I hold down on my mouse, I'm going to start painting over, and you'll notice what it's doing is it's following the source area. So when I come over to that window, it actually starts to paint the window over the top of that shrub, which in this case isn't what I was exactly looking for. So the floating brush is not going to work for me in this case. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete that out. And we're going to show you another tool, which is called the Fixed Clone Brush. Go to Draw, Clone Brush, and Fixed. I'll select the square brush type. Okay, with this brush, what we're going to do is we're going to define a source area. So I need to click and hold and drag a rectangle around the area to define as the source area. Now it needs to be a fairly clean, unobstructed area. Okay, I'm going to release there. Okay, now my cursor changes to a pencil icon, so I can just click and then I can just paint right over the top of that shrub. Okay, and I'll just come over here, paint over this one. And what it's doing is it's taking my source area that I defined in that rectangle area, and it's repeating that area over and over again. Okay, just like that. Okay, now it's extremely important whenever we do any cloning at all, we need to flatten the cloned area to the background. That does two things for us. It keeps us from accidentally moving the cloned area away from where we desire it to be. It also makes the program much more efficient. If you do not flatten the cloned area, it's probably going to crash the program eventually. So you want to make sure that you flatten as you go, and that will make the program a lot more efficient. Okay, so what we're going to do to flatten it is we'll right click on it and select Flatten Selected Objects. Okay, this is going to flatten to the background. I'll click Yes here. Okay, now it's made a part of the background image. Alright, now let's go ahead and show you another technique. Now, what we could do is we could come over and cover up the edge of this tree using the same technique. Now let's go ahead and use the Fixed Clone Brush with a square brush, and I'm going to define this area first. Okay, now when I start painting with that, you'll notice that it appears to be the color is inconsistent. Okay, and that's because the top area is slightly shaded darker than the bottom area of the area that I've defined, so it appears to be striped. So I need to be very careful when I select a source area. Now let's go ahead and zoom in, and this area here seems to be pretty color consistent, unlike the area up here at the top. So I'm going to use that as my source area. paint over that, you'll notice the color is much more consistent. There we go. There is a stripe to it, but it's much more consistent than it was before. Okay. Alright, another thing that we can do with this example here is, let's say we have a large tree that is sitting in front of this window, and we can't just delete the tree and it doesn't have the window there behind it that we can recover. So let's go ahead and drag a tree up there like so. Okay, now one technique that we can use here is using a tool called the Rectangle Area tool on our toolbar. If I click on that, I'm going to drag a rectangle around the right side of this window. And I'll go ahead and release it right about there. And I'll select Create New Object. Okay, so what that did is it selected the window and it created a new object out of half of that window. So now what we can do is go up to our toolbar, and with the item selected, I'm going to select Flip Horizontally. And it flips it around the opposite direction. Now when you have a symmetrical window or a symmetrical door or something, it does work very nicely. Okay, there we go. So now we have a window where we couldn't see the entire window before. Now I would just come over with my fixed clone brush and just clone over the top of the shrub, and then we'd be able to remove that shrub. Alright, now let's go ahead and open up a different project. Okay, now I have our tutorial project. This is clonehouse.jpg that we're going to use here. We're going to show you a couple more tricks. Now one thing that we can do here is, again, this house is fairly symmetrical, and the roof line here is symmetrical with the roof line on the left side, but this side has a tree obstructing part of the roof. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out and we're going to flip it horizontally, just like we did the example that we had on the window. So I'll go up to my toolbar. Instead of selecting the rectangle area tool, I'm going to select the scissor tool. Okay, I'm going to come in and just cut around that like so. And when I get back to my starting point, I get the pop-up that wants me to create new object. Okay, so there's my new object. I'll go up to the toolbar and select Flip Horizontally, and it flips it right around. So I just drag it over the top like that and overlay it. Okay. And now you cannot see the branch that was covering up the roof line before. Alright, one other thing that we can do here is we can create a pattern which is going to be similar to the technique that we used with the fixed clone brush. We can create a pattern using the rectangle area tool. So I select that, and the pattern that I'm going to use is this nice large brick area here. Okay, so I just drag a large rectangle around it. Instead of Create New Object, this time I'm going to select Create Pattern. I'll select Polygon and Tile. And what this is going to do, it's going to take this pattern and repeat it over and over. So I'm just going to click around this and then move over to here, up there, and then I'll right click on it and that sets that down. Okay, so I have a very smooth pattern across there using this brick material that we had up on the top. Alright, and those are cloning tools. Now, whenever you're trying to cover up existing material, always keep in mind that down in our Miscellaneous tab under Building Materials, you're going to have several different types of siding and roofing materials to select from here. So you may be able to match the house with a siding color that we have in our library. So always keep those in mind when covering up existing materials.